All right, folks, it's January 27th, 2004. I'm Alex Jones, your host. We have about 53 and a half minutes left in this live show. Now, I just aired excerpts from a PBS documentary, America Rebuilds. PBS documentary. And it's about September 11th and now the rebuilding of the complex. Now, what you just saw is one of the biggest stories of our lifetime, hidden in plain view. Hidden in plain view. Everything today is hidden in plain view. You just watched the video. We're going to re-air it. Those are just clips out of the film. The clips are also at Infowars.com. What did you just see? You just saw the owner of WTC 7 and the entire complex, Larry Silverstein, saying that they decided to engage in the controlled demolition, destruction of Building 7 on the afternoon of September 11th, 2001. Why is that so important? Because the FEMA report and the government says that fire caused Building 7 to collapse. The 47-story building, the third largest building in the complex of 7 buildings. Now, we know they blew up Tower 1 and 2. We know they had shape charges. From the seismographs, the police reports, the firefighter reports, we know Building 7. We know they blew that up. I've been saying that for 28 months since it happened. We knew that was hidden in plain view. But the government said, no explosives in any of the buildings. They collapsed on their own from fire. And now in plain view, in a PBS documentary, America Rebuilds, Larry Silverstein, the owner, says that on 9/11 the building's burning and they decide to pull it so that the fire doesn't spread. They give the order to pull it and they watch it come down. Pull it is the industry term for a controlled demolition of a building. In fact, we have clips from the same documentary. It's all about the destruction and the rebuilding. We have clips off the same PBS documentary where they admit to blowing up buildings 4, 5, and 6 and then pulling down the rest of the wreckage in mid-December, 2.5 months later. Remember, those are the buildings that didn't fall. And so they got rid of them to rebuild the entire area. Remember that? But the 2 towers fell. Building 7 wasn't hurt. And then hours after the towers fall, it catches on fire. And then it collapses at 4:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Building 7 collapses. Dan Rather sees it live and says, looks like dynamite, looks like controlled demolition. Peter Jennings has a reporter going, yeah, it was a controlled demolition. The firefighters, and we have these articles and transmission tapes and AP reporters said, we were told to get back from Building 7. They were about to implode it. They were about to pull it. I remember the day of the event that happened. I got on air and said they blew up Building 7. No. Forget what you heard. The official story is it fell on its own. A modern steel building has never collapsed from fire damage. They've had Chicago hotels, New York hotels that have burned for 3 days. 50-story buildings, towering infernos, they don't collapse. Doesn't happen. It takes a blowtorch to melt steel. But 2 jets hit Tower 1 and 2. The firefighters go up in the tower, report that the fires are almost out, send up more teams, we're going to put it out. That's why firefighters ran in. That's why they ran into the building. They knew they could put it out. Then they report bombs going off and they collapse. People said, oh no, jet fuel did that. So we said, okay, jet fuel did it. Building 7 collapses 8+ hours later, has 2 small fires in it. It collapses with classic controlled demolition. They only do that if every girder is blown out by plastic explosives. The seismographs pick up multiple explosions. We go on air and say this was controlled demolition from the eyewitnesses, the seismographs, the police, the firefighters. I put it in 2 films and a book. I made 2 films and wrote a book about this. And now we learned that this has been out in plain view for a year. Larry Silverstein in America Rebuilds from PBS, and he just calmly says, we blew it up. So we're going to air these clips. We'll air them again at the very end of the show because I got other important news I need to get to. We're going to air these clips, and Mike, you ready to stop it? Because I want to go through each point. This is just some of the stuff I grabbed off the video. I want to go through this and stop it point by point. Now, the first thing is we have one of the local city engineers going, yeah, that morning I got up and the buildings were on fire, and I thought we just need to go, in there and fix the problems of the buildings. I had no idea they'd collapse. Well, again, engineers know that no steel modern building has ever collapsed from fire. So he sees Tower 1 and 2 burning. He says, I went down there to try to fix it, and it collapsed. Well, yeah, I mean, I have an engineer friend, Jimmy Wright, who worked in the World Financial Center. He has a ranch out in Fredericksburg. Kevin Booth's brother-in-law. Been out at his house many times at the ranch. And I called him that morning because I knew he worked in the World Financial Center. He said, I'm an engineer. It's the most controlled demolition I've ever seen in my life. And that's on the website. Everybody said that. The designers of the buildings went, somebody blew that up. Those buildings were designed. Suddenly they shut up. Professors all over the country of architecture and engineering said, that's impossible. Suddenly they shut up. Next time I talked to Jimmy, he said, I'm not going to talk about it. I can't talk about it. Firefighter Engineering, the oldest firefighting publication in the country, oldest firefighting organization, 160 years old, says that it's impossible for that to happen to 1 or 2 or Building 7 that wasn't hit by an airplane, and that Controlled Demolition Incorporated, who, by the way, covered up Oklahoma City, did that demolition, was criminally with the government hauling the material away to China for smelting and not allowing any investigators in. Did you know that? But understand, Building 7 wasn't hit by an aircraft, but it collapsed. So the first clip is an engineer going, yeah, I went down there to help that morning, didn't think it collapsed, never thought it would, but it did, Building 1 and 2, North and South Towers. Then we cut to a clip from the video where they talk about mid-December, where they did the admitted controlled takedown of buildings 4, 5, and 6. 4, 5, and 6. Those buildings weren't knocked down either. Admittedly, months after the fires are out, in mid-December, they blew up the rest of the buildings. And they call it pulling it. You'll hear them go, yeah, we're about to demolish, we're about to take down the building, we're going to pull it. That's the industry term for a demolition, is pulling a building. Because some people will watch Silverstein go, yeah, the building was on fire on 9/11 and we didn't want to have any more loss of life, so we made the decision to pull it. And so they demolish the building. By the way, a Secret Service agent did die in the building, according to the Congress. We have that in the article. So someone did die in Building 7. But we play the first clip so you understand that pulling it means demolishing. Then we play the clip of Silverstein talking about 9/11 where they pulled Building 7. Building 7 fell on September 11th at 4:35 Eastern. In mid-December, they destroyed 4, 5, and 6. And we play that clip because they describe the demolition as pulling the buildings. So here it is. Here it is, my friends, hidden in plain view. Now, FEMA has said the building fell because of fire. Never happened before. Happened to 3 buildings in one day. But here's the owner saying it was controlled demolition. And understand, how did they get explosives in a building when it takes days or weeks to do it if they decided to destroy it on 9/11? You can't do that. Even if they had hours to do it, the building was on fire on the 7th and 12th floors. We have photos and video clips, all that on the website. But here it is, folks. Go ahead and roll it. Stay with us.
of September 11th. Shortly after I got to City Hall, I'd say about 9:30, I called regional scaffold. And at that point in time, I thought all I needed was some scaffolding and netting and some sidewalk bridging, because all I saw was that a plane had hit the building and there were going to be some hazardous structural elements hanging off the building, and I knew I needed to protect the public from walking in and around the Trade Center complex. Never realizing that the towers would actually collapse.
The Trade Center complex had consisted of 7 buildings. The attack on the Twin Towers destroyed all of them. The South Tower was the first to fall. The Marriott Vista Hotel was crushed. A half an hour later, the North Tower collapsed. World Trade Centers 4, 5, and 6 were left standing but damaged beyond repair. World Trade Center 7 fell after burning for 7 hours. Workers toiled in bitter smoke and clouds of toxic dust composed of pulverized concrete, fiberglass, and asbestos.
Boom. Asbestos. Towers 1 and 2 were admittedly built, all the insulation out of asbestos. It was publicly admitted in the plans. The federal government would not pay for masks for firefighters, police, and others for the months after. And Bush put out an executive order, that is a PDD, not an executive order, but an interdepartmental directive, that the government not fund that, and then later that they not fund the medical problems of firefighters and police. This just came out a month ago. And that they knew there was asbestos clouds everywhere. You probably heard about this. And they ordered the Environmental Protection Agency to change their report and say no asbestos, when publicly the architecture plans said asbestos. So interesting little slip up there by PBS admitting that. And again, asbestos is the fireproofing. One reason the firefighters reported from their own transmission tapes that we have posted at Infowars.com that the fires were almost completely out. Then they start reporting bombs and the explosions go off. Can't have those pesky firefighters talking about the bombs they found. That's why the feds then declared that all the firefighters' radio tapes had malfunctioned. Turned out that wasn't true. The New York Daily News reported that they had all the tapes and the feds had ordered them blocked. The firefighters got mad and released the tapes, and now we have them posted on the website with a direct link to the City of New York's own website. We'll go over that a little bit later. In the detailed report at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. But now let's get to the key clips. This is where they admit that 4, 5, and 6, the remnants of them, were pulled or demolished. That pulling means demolition. Then we'll go to Silverstein going, yeah, we blew Building 7 up on 9/11 that afternoon. Just right out in the open. It's like Blair saying 2 weeks ago, well, Iraq's about weapons of mass destruction. They slip up all the time. Here it is.
Toxic dust composed of pulverized concrete, fiberglass, and asbestos. Construction experts from across the country ran the complicated demolition work. By mid-December, the Department of Design and Construction had leveled World Trade Center buildings 4 and 5.
Hello? Oh, we're getting ready to pull Building 6.
We had to be very careful how we demolished Building 6. We were worried about the Building 6 coming down and then damaging the slurry wall, so we wanted that particular building to fall within a certain area.
So, don't get confused here. Have critical thinking. We're playing the clip where in mid-December they got rid of Building 4, 5, and 6. And we just showed the head of the construction for the city and the others on the site getting ready to blow them, saying on national TV, pulling, demolish. Pulling means demolish. You can go look it up in the dictionary or on any controlled demolition website. It's what the term means. So now let's go ahead and go to Silverstein, going back to 9/11. The owner saying they destroyed Building 7 that afternoon. Go ahead and go to it.
Trade Center 7 had always been considered the starting point for rebuilding. Located north of the slurry wall, 7 had been cleared faster than the rest of the site, and there had been no bodies to recover. Pelted by debris when the North Tower collapsed, 7 burned until late afternoon, allowing occupants to evacuate to safety.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Okay, and then we air it again here in a second. We play it again. To the Statesman writers, to the Chronicle writers, to anyone out there that cares, to UT professors, anybody that has a brain, it is on the record that they say there were no bombs, no demolition in any of the buildings on 9/11. They're on the record, despite the seismographs, the firefighters, the police, the AP reporters that said, we were told to get back, they were going to control demolition of the building. Building 7 wasn't hit by a plane. This is in plain view, the owner slipping up in a documentary, and the documentary makers don't even know what they're putting on television. Stuff's too complex now to cover all this up. You're right, it's too big. You can't cover it up. You haven't covered any of what you did up. And so the owner admits that on 9/11, they have the controlled demolition of this building. Now, is there going to be a news article about this? Does anybody care? Is this anything anyone's concerned about? Hidden in plain view. Now look, from the seismographs, the firefighters, the witnesses, we know they had charges already in 1 and 2. The 110-story buildings. And so we wouldn't have to argue with you. We always pointed at 7. Because 7 wasn't hit by an aircraft, caught fire later in the afternoon and collapsed. Geometrically imploded in on itself. Also, Rudolph Giuliani told ABC News that morning, we have the links to ABC News, by the way. Rudolph Giuliani, this is from my report at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Any reporters want to find out the truth, want to know what investigation really is, go to the website. Who else knew that Building 7 was about to collapse? A photographer named Tom Franklin was near Building 7 at around 4 p.m. He remarked for ABC News, firemen evacuated the area as they prepared for the collapse of Building 7. We were watching and catching our breath, drinking water and juice, when I decided to walk back towards the debris. It was about 4 and 5 p.m. I would say I was 150 yards away when I saw the firefighters raising the flag. And then we have the Rudolph Giuliani quote. Before either of the towers collapsed, Mayor Rudolph Giuliani and his associates were told to leave the headquarters that they had set up within Building 7. Now, Building 7 was the head of FEMA, was the head of the city, the county emergency management. It was the head for the CIA, FBI, and Secret Service. Remember in 99, they built that big federal command bunker on the 30th floor? It controlled the loudspeakers in Building 1 and 2 that told the people to stay at their desk after the second plane had hit. Remember hearing that in the news? Their own security guards, Port Authority, told people to stay in the buildings, stay in the buildings. Remember that? That's public. You ask, why'd they do that? Gotta have a higher number here. Now this is a quote from Rudolph Giuliani. Quote, we were operating out of there when we were told that World Trade Center was going to collapse. Rudolph Giuliani told Peter Jennings of ABC News that morning, continuing to quote, and it did collapse before we could get out of the building. Despite this, Giuliani fled WTC 7 at least 8 hours before it collapsed. How did he know that the Twin Towers are going to collapse if it was such an unprecedented occurrence? Why did the firefighters on the ground get the same warning? Giuliani runs out of Building 7, live on the news, and tells Peter Jennings, we got a call to evacuate Building 7 because Tower 1 and 2 were going to come down. But before we could get out of Building 7, Tower 1 and 2 came down. So somebody knows Tower 1 and 2, modern buildings have never done this, are going to collapse. No one's ever seen this happen. Giuliani's in 7, and he says somebody gave him a call. He later elaborated. He said, I don't know who gave me the call. Someone told me to get out of 7. Then 8 hours later, it collapses. The New York University's seismographs, the state, and the feds pick up multiple explosions, where it shows multiple explosions. The professor said, we've seen this every time. This is controlled demolition. Also, we have the still images from Fox News, a video showing the puffs of smoke down the side of 7, down 1 and 2, of the classic demolition charges going off, boom, 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 before the buildings collapse. Boom, 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 boom. In there, but it's an orgy of evidence. An orgy of evidence. Tell you what, we haven't played the Dan Rather piece yet, Mike. It's at the end of it. Can you fast forward that to Dan Rather, please? I want to air that where Dan Rather talks about looks like well-placed dynamite. Yeah, we all said that from the seismographs, the reports, the police, the firefighters, but now the owner says they blew it up right out in the open. Go ahead and play Dan Rather.
It would be one of the largest buildings in town, probably. Trade Center Building 7 has collapsed. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself.
Describe that.
Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
We knew they blew it up from the seismograph, the police, the eyewitnesses, the firefighters. But to have the owner say they blew it up in plain view of everyone, and these bastards are doing this more and more, it's just arrogant revelation of the method right out in front of us. Psychological warfare tactic on PBS. Let's take calls. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, Alex, what's going on, man?
Doing a show about this. What do you think?
Yeah. Hey, well, I was going to say, anybody with common sense can put 2 and 2 together after they admitted they blew up number 7, and number 7 went down the exact same way 1 and 2 did. So, I don't know. Anybody with common sense should be able to see that, man.
But they denied after the fact. I remember driving in my car and listening to ABC News on KLBJ that day. And they're going, well, yes, that building could endanger others. There's discussions of bringing it down. And I went, how do you bring it down? It takes days or weeks to plant explosives. And then it collapses. We get the seismographs. Peter Jennings watches it, says it looks like it's controlled demolition. We have that clip too. Dan Rather sees it and says that. Then they get the official story. Oh, no, it fell because of a fire. Wasn't hit by a plane. No steel building had ever done that. It doesn't happen. So yes, they blew all of them up. Yes, they staged the whole event. But it's hidden in plain view. I'm glad you get it. Hello, caller. Go ahead.
Alex, thank you for expanding my mind. One of the questions I had with other countries, media-wise, and citizens of other countries, do they just think we're idiots for believing all this and not really getting into more critical thinking on this? And with the media, why would Dan Rather even say that if this was something that we're really controlling anyway, our government is?
Very good questions. Dan Rather isn't a government agent. Richard Opel isn't a government agent, the editor of the local Statesman. You have a sea of reporters and mindsets and people who've been tested by their past reports, and you just pick the type of people you want to run things, then they're given the official story and don't ask questions. They're given the official story and don't ask questions. So Dan Rather and Peter Jennings, we've got the Peter Jennings clip too. It's on the website. You can go watch it. They just go, man, looks like controlled demolition. Looks like plastic explosives. So they saw what we saw. Then later, oh, no, it's not plastic explosives. It's like Oklahoma City. I have the newscast, the building blown out, police going, yeah, the BATF was just here and said they were warned not to come into work. It's a cop right there on the scene. Yeah, we're removing a third bomb right now. Yeah, there's bombs in there. You know, the columns are blasted off, the building's blown out, not in. The government declares national security on all the surveillance camera tapes. And all the local news said multiple bombs, seismographs pick up multiple bombs, they've removed bombs, there's video of the bombs. Then they get the official story, okay, no other bombs, no John Doe number 2, McVeigh acted alone. It's just, you didn't see somebody on the grassy knoll, shut up. Is that we'll hear about the corruption in Europe, they'll hear about our corruption, but never our corruption here domestically. Do you understand? This is how Iraq worked. I told you before we went into Iraq that we would go into Iraq, be the oppressors, bulldoze their corn, their fields, kill their plants, their date palms, all of it. Then they'd send the UN in to have real elections, and hey, we're good, and they'll play the part of the good cop. The same banks own the UN that own our banks, that own the EU, that own America. It's all the same people. But they got to play good cop, bad cop. They've got to create a false bipolar world to make you think you've got choices. They have policy papers on this I've read. I mean, it's not like I just thought up how they run it. I mean, how did I know the UN would take over? How did I know they do all this? Because I read their own policy reports, which they know you'll never read. And so in Europe, they say the wicked right-wing Texans carried out 9/11. Big papers. How Bush funded the terrorists, how they protected them. The best-selling videos and books and TV shows. The whole bestseller list in France and England and Germany are all saying the U.S. government did 9/11. Public knowledge worldwide, just everywhere. But here we don't hear that. But in Europe, it's, see, the EU's good. We'll stop those evil Americans. Look what they did in Iraq. World government will stop the evil rogue Americans. The third world's all coming together under the UN and the Euro right now. While Bush is part of the same system playing the bad cop. Bush is playing the bad cop. That's how it's working. And so it's the same thing. All over the world, 9/11's come out. Let me give you an article out of Canada. I reported this 28 months ago. 28 months ago, I reported this on the show. Well, actually, I reported it before 9/11 that Bush was partners with bin Laden and it was all staged and bin Laden was going to attack America or take the blame for it for the CIA. Zoom in on this for folks, please. This is the Canadian Broadcasting System. Canadian Broadcasting System, CBC. Now, they state 3 facts in the first 3 paragraphs. But that's good, Mike. Thank you. But call it a conspiracy. Conspiracy or coincidence. Now, the idea here is every time they talk about the sun rising, it's a conspiracy. But then they go on to quote facts. Now, this is Canada. Canada Television has said in other reports that George Bush carried out 9/11. Now, George Bush did not carry out 9/11. George Bush is a teleprompter reading idiot who doesn't run anything. Neither does the CIA daddy. They're just the convenient front company. Now, this is CBC. Conspiracy or coincidence? Is it a conspiracy or coincidence that there is a long entangled history between Bush and the Bush family and the elite of Saudi Arabia? It begins in the 1970s in Houston, Texas, where George W. Bush was just starting out his family's 2 businesses of politics and oil. The powerful and very rich bin Laden family helped fund his first venture into oil. The cozy friendship continued for decades after a terror attack at a barracks in Saudi Arabia, which killed 19 Americans. The bin Laden family received a multi-billion-dollar contract to rebuild. Now, I've been talking about that for years. When the bin Ladens blow something up, it's actually the CIA, the payment for them taking the blame is they're given the contract. You understand? And incredibly, oh, by the way, no bid contracts. They're just given them. No bid contracts. They're just given them. And incredibly, Bush Sr. was in business meeting at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Washington the morning of September 11th with one of Osama bin Laden's brothers, the head of the family, Shafiq bin Laden. Now, right here, they admit the bin Ladens put Bush Jr. in business. The bin Ladens rebuild our bases after bin Laden supposedly blows them up and get paid with no bids allowed more than the contract's worth, and that Bush Sr. was meeting at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in a Carlyle Group meeting at 8:30 in the morning over omelets with the head of the bin Laden family. Simultaneously, the head of the Pakistani intelligence, the admitted head of al-Qaeda, General Mahmoud Ahmed, is meeting with the House and Senate Intelligence Committee chairman over breakfast at 8:30. The New York Times reported a staffer walked in and said the towers have been attacked, and they said, smiled, Porter Goss turned and said, "We know," and drank some coffee. We know. It feels so good to be on the inside, tightening that tie up, all the sweet deal contracts you're going to get on the whore tits of the New World Order. You people are sick filth. The globalists run white slavery, kidnapping, everything. Right out in open view. They're so evil, it's unspeakable. But you're so naive, you can't see it. And so they go through 9 pages of bin Laden, al-Qaeda connections in every business deal, every operation, every terror attack you can imagine. Plain view, admitted, CBC. Every day these articles are in European press.